G'day, it's Bangers here, and welcome to the Evo Central podcast to recap the results from Finals Week 2. It's Monday, the 17th of August 2009, and what a big weekend of football results we had this weekend. Crackerjack finals in both the games. We'll go straight into the results, then we'll take a look at next week's, the finals coming up this week. We'll have a look at that next. In the first semi-final on Saturday, 15th of August, the East Melbourne Firebirds done one over on the Rage. The Rage, two-time defending champions, are out of the race now for the first time in unfamiliar territory down there in Sydney, or up there in Sydney. The Eastern Firebirds done it in style too, 33-point victors over the Rage. They had the returning Nick Del Santo, the captain, and Lenny Hayes back in the team also. Daniel Bradshaw came in for Matt Stokes. For the Rage, not really much to say except for Steve Johnson was an omission there for the Rage. Top scorers for the game, Joe Watson was really the standout. 34 points in a finals game. He's really paying dividends now after his trade from the Fusion last year during the off-season, so he's really paying dividends now. And Andrew Mackey stood up with 24 points off the back line. And the captain, Nick Del Santo, he's always amongst the best. He got 22 points for the Rage. Mark Murphy tried hard with 23 points. He's been probably their most consistent performer all year. Shannon Hearn came into the team as well, but he scored 18 points. Actually, I think he played last week, so Shannon Hearn, but yeah, he got 18 points. Greg Broughton continued his late season form in his rookie season with 17 points. Luke Hodge, the captain, went missing with 9 points, so disappointing there from Luke Hodge. And yeah, the Sydney City Rage are out for the first time, so they won't be participating on Grand Final Day. They'll be able to sit back and watch for the first time. Bluey McKenna, what's going to be happening with him next year? There's some interesting news developing in Evo land at the moment, so stay tuned for the Big Footy Fix midweek for that one. The Firebirds will go on next week to play in their first prelim final against the Canberra War Dogs up at Manuka Stadium, but we'll talk about that one next, or shortly. But first we're going to talk about the amazing result in the second semi-final on Saturday night. The Subiaco Vipers went into Adelaide and knocked off the minor premiers 120 to 117 in a close encounter. The Stingrays will be spewing. It's becoming somewhat of a curse now. The Stingrays have not won a finals game in their club history. They finished in the old conference system last year. They finished on top of the conference and knocked out in straight sets against the Fusion and Dragons. This year it's the War Dogs and the Vipers doing the dirty on them, and they're knocked out. See you later. Season's over. The Vipers, best scorers for them, James Bartel. Jimmy, the captain, got 24 points. Sam Mitchell with 22 points. Nick Rewalt played valiantly up forward too with 16 points. For the Stingrays, it's the same old case of the Ablett and Corey show. 29 points for Ablett and 20 for Corey. Usually this year you could add Joel Selwood to that mix, but he had the unfamiliar role of having to play in the back line and didn't really find his feet there. So the Stingrays with some problems scoring there. It was close at halftime. The Vipers only had a 1 point lead. Much to do with Gary Ablett, but Gary Ablett's the only one that kept the Vipers, the Stingrays, in the game by the looks of it, and the Vipers got up there, so the Vipers will now move on to a prelim final against the Fusion next Saturday night. So we'll move on now. So it's see you later Rage and see you later Stingrays, two highly fancied teams. The Rage, everyone expected for them to turn it on come finals time. They did last week, couldn't back it up in Melbourne this week, so the Firebirds will move on. The Stingrays thought this year was the year. After last year going out in straight sets, they thought this year was the year they could possibly go on and reach further into the finals, but still yet to win a finals game, and they're out second week of the finals once again. So we'll move on now to look at next week's games. We've got on Saturday afternoon, we've got the War Dogs hosting the Firebirds at Manuka Stadium. Interesting to note that the only two previous games between these two clubs have been at Manuka Stadium, and the Firebirds have won both of them. Earlier this year, the Firebirds got up 116 to 112, 4-point victory there. In 2008, they got up 125 to 118, so 7 points separating the two there. They also did play in the semi-final of the Knockout Cup this year, which of course the War Dogs won because they went on and won the whole lot. So that's their only win in official home and away business, though. The Firebirds have the wood over the War Dogs, but interesting, these two teams lost their senior ruckman early in the year, Jamie Charman for the Firebirds and David Hill for the War Dogs, and Paddy Wright has carried the rock for most of the year for the War Dogs, but Jess White has stepped up. He's more of a natural ruckman, and he's been playing really good football there, the youngster. And the Firebirds have been covered this year by Jason Blake, who's he played last year as well. They acquired Charman, Premiership ruckman from the Rage, to maybe take him to the next level. Charman went down with a knee injury, and Blake stepped up this year, so he's done well. It's going to be good to see the battle of the midfields there. We've got Del Santo and Hayes up against the likes of Swan and Simon Goodwin. We've got Farron Ray's having a good year this year. Forwards, Favola up against Rewalt at the other end to try and kick a bag each. So lots of key matchups around the ground. This one should be really exciting. I'm going to go with the Canberra War Dogs to make the grand final this year. They got knocked out in the conference final last year against the Rage at home at Manuka, and having lost the last two games against the Firebirds, I don't think it's going to count for much. I think the War Dogs are going to use that as motivation and get up over the Firebirds this week. On to the second game, the Fusion against the Subiaco Vipers. The Fusion really are the Vipers' bogey team, because in 5 meetings in 3 years, the Fusion have got up on all occasions. The last three occasions earlier this year, well, only 4 weeks ago actually, the Fusion got up by 2 points, and including both games last year, the margin in total has only been 13 points in those 3 games, all to the Fusion though, but shows that the Vipers are competitive with them, and that dates back to the 2007 prelim final when the Fusion embarrassed the Vipers, who were aiming for a Cinderella story of some sorts that year, and couldn't pull it off. The Fusion wiped their hands of the Vipers on the way to a loss to the Rage in the grand final, but no Rage this year for the Fusion. I think the Fusion would go into this game favourites, having said that the Vipers can't seem to beat the Fusion at all, and it's in Adelaide. I'm going to go with the Fusion. So my tips would have the Canberra War Dogs and the Central Districts Fusion playing off in the grand final in a fortnight's time, and that would be, if that were to happen, the Fusion would be hosting that, and it'd be at Amy Stadium. The only team that can't host at the moment is Subiaco Vipers, so it's either going to be in Adelaide, Canberra or Melbourne, depending on results. But Fusion get through without the Stingrays there now. They're the top qualifying team, so they'll host the grand final. Those are my tips. With the Fusion though, with the Vipers, Jolly's pulled up sore after the game last week, so hopefully he can get over that. There's a few injury clouds around at the Fusion. Sewell and Fisher should be back. Goddard is in doubt at the moment, and so is Brad Johnson. So interesting, though they could swing the results. I'm taking my tip. I'm banking on those two playing. So there's my tips for next week. We'll see you at the Big Footy Fix with all the big news during the week, and thanks for listening.